In 2019 I watched an anime you might have heard of by now called Kimetsu no Yaiba, or for the non-weebs better known as Demon Slayer. Yaiba has since become a phenomenon in Japan, breaking all sorts of sales records for the manga, with a movie already in the works. The anime is regarded by many as one of the best, if not the best, to come out recently, which is debatable because Vinland Saga exists, but regardless, it piqued my interest. So I grabbed my popcorn, sat back, relaxed, and binged the entire season in a couple of days. My thoughts? Well, it was alright, I guess.
How dare you!
I just thought it was kinda generic, you know? Wait, don't kill me just yet, hear me out. There's plenty of elements to praise here. The animation is gorgeous, I mean, look at this. Look at this. They even pull off some impressive 3D animation that more often than not looks atrocious in anime. The score is excellent, the character designs are great, the pace is very enjoyable, the stakes are always high, and the world building is adequate. The generic aspect I mentioned comes more from the story and the characters, which people would argue is just the nature of the shonen genre, which I disagree with, but I don't want to get into in this video. In the same vein, I would also like to point out that the series, to its credit, executes all these familiar elements quite well, which could explain its tremendous success. However, there are some things one could pick apart. The ghost training bit?
Ghosts.
Yeah, you know, ghosts.
What do ghosts have to do with this?
The change of the scar on Tanjiro's forehead? I mean, is this like going to a tattoo parlor in a GTA game? The talking birds perhaps? Maybe this? This? Oh yeah, definitely this. All of this. All of this. But why are we here exactly?
Why are we here?
The point of this video, as the title suggests, is to make a critique of the series. By that I mean from an objective standpoint. That is going to be the brand for this channel, by the way, objectivity. Furthermore, none of what I just said until this point could be called objective, since I haven't provided a single piece of evidence to support any of my claims. All I did thus far was to subjectively tell you what my thoughts on the series were. My first idea was to write a critical analysis of the anime as a whole, breaking down what works and what doesn't, but truth be told, laziness got the better of me, and besides, I learned from the best that... Right, so instead I'll do the next best thing and give you a small critique of Kimetsu no Yaiba for 35 minutes. But before I proceed, I feel like I need to explain what's going to be the format for this video. Even though I wrote the script in essay form and truly believe it could stand on its own as an objective analysis of the thesis I'm about to introduce, at the same time, I also felt that simply delivering it as it was would be, frankly, kinda boring. Therefore, you might notice a bit of emotion slipping through from time to time, alongside with some subjective sound bites.
Right, Starling! What's the plan? Alright, just take your seat.
Just moments ago, I was telling you about all the things that bother me while watching Demon Slayer, but the fact is, none of those actually took me out of the experience. There's one thing, however, one thing in specific that, when I watched it, I couldn't believe how dumb it was, and I knew I had to vent my frustrations about it, hence this video. Without further ado, I got 2 words for you. No, not those. These. So the final selection was really weird. Weird, because weird is the word we use when you don't want to piss off anybody, and we, at Cross Counter, promise to be nice.
We lie!
Yeah, the final selection is terrible and makes no sense whatsoever. Now, don't get me wrong, when I say final selection, I'm not referring to the mini arc in the anime, I'm simply criticizing the exam itself as a selection process for the Demon Slayer core. This is how I'm going to approach the topic. I will divide the video into 5 parts. Firstly, a brief introduction to the world of Kimetsu no Yaiba and how the final selection fits into it. Then we get to the meat of the matter, with the next 3 parts consisting of my arguments against the final selection exam. Lastly, I will offer a suggestion on how I would change the exam in order to improve its effectiveness. At this point, I would like to point out that this analysis is exclusively for the anime of Demon Slayer. I haven't read the manga, and therefore I'm not aware if any of the topics about to be addressed in this video were ever discussed in the comic. And, needless to say, this video will contain spoilers for the anime, so be warned.
No spoilies!
I'm ready. And here we go.
Our favorite generic anime takes place in an industrialized Japan, which already gives us all the information we need about the society of this world without requiring any further explanation. By this I mean something very specific, and that is that the story world of Yaiba is similar to the real world. We're dealing with human beings living on planet Earth, with the same oceans, the same continents, and the same countries, such as Japan. The geography also seems to remain the same, since they travel between existing cities and real landscape. Now, what Mr. Obvious is trying to point out here is that by simply choosing a familiar setting like this, the job of the author becomes easier when it comes to world building. In this scenario, there is little to nothing that you have to introduce in terms of societal norms. After all, they live in a world similar to ours. It's nothing like the world of Naruto or One Piece, where they have different nations, different political systems, and, most importantly, different societies altogether. Don't get me wrong, the world of Yaiba is still fictional, I'm aware of that, just more grounded in reality when compared to those other series I just mentioned. And these similarities in the setting extend to the structure, the laws, and especially the moral values of a Japanese society, which are going to be key in helping to explain where I'm coming from.
I'm boring myself just talking about this.
Turn it up!
Oh, okay.
Now that we've established the setting, let's get to the fun part, the fantasy elements. In Yaiba, there are demons, evil beings who prey on the ever-expanding yet fragile human race. And as a response to these attacks, the Demon Slayer Corps was created. Its purpose is to train humans in the art of swordsmanship, the Demon Slayers, whose job is to hunt down and put an end to these monsters. In order to match the supernatural strength and abilities of the demons, the Demon Slayers developed secret breathing techniques that allow them to perform superhuman feats. As you can imagine, learning these techniques isn't easy, and so students spend years training to perfect them with their trainers. When the trainer deems their student ready to join the Demon Slayer Corps, the wannabe Slayers are required to take a special exam called the Final Selection. Oh no, kill me now. The final selection works thusly. The students must travel to Mount Fujikasane, which is specifically chosen for the exam because it is surrounded by a special flower named Wisteria. What makes this flower so special is that it is the only known natural weakness of demons aside from sunlight. So the landscape works as a sort of prison for the demonic beings that had been previously captured by the Demon Slayers for the purpose of the exam. Although they can't escape, they are allowed to roam free on the summit, and since no human goes there, I hope for their souls, this makes for the perfect testing ground for our young upstarts. Upon arriving on the mountain, the children are given the following rule. If you survive for 7 days in this hellhole, you become a Demon Slayer. That simple. So during Tanjiro's exam, what ends up happening, as expected, a lot of children entered but only a handful get to live with their lives. Sucks for them, I guess. In the anime, this is built as something that the characters don't question. Tanjiro, for example, does lament his fallen comrades at first, but then on his way home, the only thing on his mind is trying to save his sister Nezuko, which is more than reasonable, making it a great scene. He then receives his first mission and goes on his merry way without anyone ever mentioning those bloody words that are the final selection ever again. Just another typical shonen exam arc where children die in the most gruesome way, right? Well, this left me scratching my head for a while.
I have so many questions!
Let's start with a bold one, shall we? How does this pathetic excuse for an exam actually determine who is worthy to become a Demon Slayer and who isn't? I mean, all you have to do really is survive. Sure, you will most likely have to fight demons in the process, but, and this is crucial, you also might not. You may survive because you're skilled. Take for example Tanjiro. Or you might just be lucky. In fact, in the last episode, Miss Aoi confirms this is what actually happened during her exam. She just got lucky. Zenitsu also mentions that he was lucky to have survived the exam, but we must take this information with a grain of salt since, as we came to find out later, he is sometimes unaware of his own strength. My point here is, it does happen. Luck plays a role, not just skill, luck. So now I ask you, is the lucky girl equally as worthy of becoming a demon slayer than Tanjiro? Really? I think the problem I'm trying to highlight here is that the final selection, as it is designed, has no way of properly assessing the qualification of the people taking the exam, and therefore it fails on the most basic level. The Slayers equate survival with someone being ready for the job, which is flawed beyond belief. What I'm saying is, the way the exam is structured, there's no possible way of overseeing and accurately evaluating the aptitude of the students on an individual level. I mean, as far as we know, there are no examiners in the mountain alongside the students. No one is observing and taking notes from afar. Nothing.
That just makes no fucking sense. I mean, it's just bullshit. Fuck.
Okay, if you're not convinced, I will give you some proof of concept then. Imagine this scenario. Weakling candidate X follows strong and capable candidate Y. Actually, what am I doing? Let's just cut the charade altogether, shall we? Crybaby Zenitsu follows Tanjiro into the forest. Oh yeah, now we're cooking. Tanjiro does all the work by killing every single demon that comes crawling out of their cave. Zenitsu, in the meantime, in Zenitsu fashion, spends his time annoying the crap out of Tanjiro and every viewer for that matter. So now, following the nonsensical rule of this exam, they both pass with flying colors.
Oh, good for you!
Congratulations, but that doesn't seem much fair, does it? What will happen eventually is that Zenitsu will be sent on missions and will, most likely, become a liability. His incompetence will eventually cost human lives, not to mention his own. Consequently, this will also improve the strength of the demon that eats him, and then more problems will arise.
Consequences!
In episode 23, the master states this himself, that the demons are freely devouring humans, gaining strength, and surviving in the process. Therefore, it's simply unreasonable for the Slayers to send unqualified fighters to the field of battle, especially when your enemy will get stronger by your mistake. Oh my, how did this get in here? And still on this topic, if survival is all it takes to pass, why don't the candidates just stick together during the exam? Wouldn't that improve their odds of survival? According to the rules, that would be allowed, wouldn't it? If that were to happen, the results again would not give an accurate representation of the skill of the participant. I will give you another scenario even. Imagine someone that survives for 6 straight days, slaying every creeper that comes their way, and on the 7th day they are so tired from killing over 100 demons or so that they get eaten. So now, you're telling me that this person wasn't Demon Slayer material? In the end, and this is what I mean, survival means nothing.
That's just stupid!
During the Hashira meeting, this guy here mentioned something that I found extremely funny. He says the following: "The caliber of Demon Slayers has nosedived to unbelievable levels. Most of them are useless. The trainers must be blind. You'd think they could at least tell if someone's competent or not." Well, I argued that this is what your entrance exam is supposed to be for. And it seems to me that this guy agrees. As I established, the intention behind this exam is to select the next crop of Demon Slayers, and so, the candidates must fight hordes of demons to prove they're qualified for the lower rank in the Demon Slayer Corps. The thing is, Most of them are just beginners, and they have what I'm calling basic training in swordsmanship. They are rookies essentially, who most likely never even faced a demon before, let alone 5,000. Due to this reason, the challenge presented to them should match their current power level in theory. I mean, it's only fair, right? At least this kid seems to think so. He says that the demons usually used for the exam are low-ranking monsters with only a few kills on their resume. As a comparison, let's take Naruto for example. For Naruto to become a Chunin, he needs to fight other ninjas of Genin rank like himself, so that the examiners can test who is ready and qualified for the promotion to the next rank, right? Well, that doesn't seem to be the case here though. The demons that inhabit this forest have survived there since their abduction, which means that some of them have been used for this trial numerous times. This is due to the fact that no rookie has been able to, or had the opportunity to kill them. But there's also another explanation for their survival, and you've seen the show, so you know what I'm talking about. What about those demons, like this guy, who keeps eating children for years and years on end? As you know, according to the lore of the series, the more a demon feeds, the more it gets stronger. Which begs the question, why allow demons to get stronger against the new prospects for demon slayers in the first place? Are the Hashiras so lazy that they don't bother to replace the demons of Mount Fujikasane after each final selection? According to the demon, he has been living on the mountain for 47 years and has eaten at least 50 children already. A possible explanation for this could be that they just assume that the demons will end up eating each other, but they can't know that with absolute certainty though. As a matter of fact, Mr. Rokudaki knew of the existence of this demon. This is confirmed when Tanjiro tells him that he killed it and Mr. Rokudaki says, "Ooh, at last." So that explanation is out the window. And I get it. Capturing demons isn't easy. But this shouldn't be an excuse. The Ashiras should be more than capable to deal with low-ranking demons. I'd consider this to be a massive oversight by the Slayers, which allows the demons to gain power and creates unnecessary complications for the students, making this the second reason why this exam is a terrible selection process.
Stop acting so stupid!
I mean, yes, Tanjiro was strong enough to defeat this evolved demon of sorts, but they can't possibly expect most students to be able to fight threats like this at this stage. This can't be what the master called bolstering the ranks of demon slayers during the Hashira meeting, can it? Meaning that only the elite of soldiers can pass the exam. If it is, this master guy is kind of a dick, because failure means death. And here's the thing, doesn't that go against the principles of the demon slayers? You know, saving human beings from being devoured by demons. Not to mention, we are dealing with children here, which brings me to my next point. Why make the candidates children? I've already explained why the exam fails as a selection process and why it is so difficult to survive it, but I haven't even touched on what I consider to be the biggest sins of all. The morality and rationality of asking children to take part in this horrible affair. And this is when you say, have you never watched any shonen anime before, you stupid idiot? Yes, to all of that. But also,
Shush.
I am aware that the genre is aimed at people in their teens, and it's for that reason that the characters are usually teenagers. The thing is, for the sake of this critique, I'm only concerned with internal consistency / logic. I'm looking to analyze if this makes sense within the universe of Kimetsu no Yaiba. And to the question of if it makes sense for all the candidates to Demon Slayers being children, the answer is ultimately no. No, it doesn't. First, I will touch on how immoral that is, and then the lack of logic behind it. Do you remember what I said in my introduction? I made a point to explain how the world of Yaiba resembles our own, Minus of course the freaking flesh-eating abominations that we call demons. But I digress. The reason behind this was because I felt necessary to express how the moral values of Yaiba differ from other fantasy series like Naruto or Hunter x Hunter. In Naruto, they train children since kindergarten to be ninjas. They go through trials and tribulations all their lives to prepare them for all the turmoil in the world outside of the Leaf Village. They even go out their way to explain that some graduation exams in other nations are more brutal and unforgiving, resulting in the death of a lot of students. We accept this because Naruto's story world is so far removed from reality. They live in a society where our concept of morality simply doesn't apply, case in point being the existence of children soldiers. A similar situation happens in Hunter x Hunter. The Hunter exams also have a high mortality rate, which is acceptable because the world of Hunter x Hunter, once again, plays by different rules. Anyone can participate in the Hunter exams given they have consent from their legal guardians, which applies to Gon and Killua. Well, not exactly with Killua, but you should watch Hunter x Hunter to know what happens. Of course this wouldn't fly in our world due to how immoral the entire process is. The parents of said children, for instance, would be stripped of their parental rights effective immediately. Can you imagine the conversation between a deadbeat dad and the social worker? No, it's okay for my child to endanger his life. That's just a normal Tuesday in this household. In fact, that's just in line with the motto of our family. And what would that be, sir? Fuck it. That actually explains a lot. Jokes aside, it's time to return to Kimetsu no Yaiba. In order to explain my position, I need to address something I've been mentioning sporadically throughout my video, and that is the famous Hashira meeting. What makes this moment very important in the story is how much information we can extract from it. On one hand, it provided us with certain details about the state of the world, and on the other hand, we learned more about the ideology and mindset of the Demon Slayers. The first thing I would like to draw attention to is what this guy says. I could look his name up. Give me a second. What is your name, sir?
It doesn't matter what your name is!
Fair enough. Our favorite blind demon slayer uses the word cruel to describe the act of humans fighting demons. And I agree, it's a gruesome, ungrateful, all-around shitty job, which in turn would make the final selection the shittiest job interview in existence. And I thought mine were awkward. But to get back on track, I would like to highlight the usage of the word cruel in his speech. This might not seem significant, but it will serve to illustrate my point. Here lies the big difference in moral values between the series in my examples and Demon Slayer. The moral philosophy of the world of Demon Slayer is grounded in reality. It is cruel to ask humans to fight demons, but you know what is even crueler? To ask children to perform this job.
That's fucking stupid.
I don't know about you and call me crazy here, but I thought the adults were the ones that protected the children and not the other way around. This is true now as it was in the 20th century. I will not deny that Japanese culture differs so much from Western culture, and this extends to ethics as well.
The thing about ethics.
Nonetheless, I stand by my next statement 200% that in this society it is not acceptable to make children fight against demonic beings. That is not only irresponsible but also morally reprehensible. People can say all they want about this being a dark fantasy series and that it's not a big deal, but there's something surreal at play here. Ironic, I know. I'm referring to a break in suspension of disbelief that I would argue does not exist in those other fictional universes I brought up. I will give you 2 more examples of what I mean. In episode 4, Mr. Orokudaki says to Tanjiro, and I quote, "I didn't want to see children die anymore," to then proceed to tell him that he's ready to become a demon slayer and most likely end up eaten by a demon. I mean, this scene was supposed to be very emotional and I get that, but I wish you could have seen my reaction because when he says that, "I didn't want to see children die anymore," I was like, "Mate, then don't, you stupid." On a serious note though, it's like Mr. Rokudaki is pointing out how inhuman the entire ordeal is, of using innocent and emotionally scarred children to fight in a supernatural war. Then, in episode 5, the Master refers to the 5 survivors of the final selection as his children. Now, I know that the Master refers to every Demon Slayer as his children, but in this case, we're dealing with literally children. This makes matters even worse because it shines a giant spotlight on the issue.
Children should not be used as instruments of war.
You don't have to tell me twice. I thought this was common human decency, but what do I know? Now, allow me to make a brief side note regarding the age of the characters, because I think the problem goes even further, extending all the way to the top. I mean, I looked it up, all these people are super young according to the wiki. The Master, for example, is only 23 years old. 23! What's up with that? Why did the writer make all the sword masters so young? I don't get it. People will say that it is this way because of the life expectancy of the 20th century, but at the same time, you have old man Urokodaki here, so this should be no excuse. I mean, these people have secret breathing techniques that enhance their physical condition. Couldn't those technically be used to prolong their lives? Unfortunately, I think this works against the series. Why not make all the Ashiras a little bit older? This would give the Demon Slayer core more grit and complexity. Not to mention, it would improve the believability factor exponentially, since it is stated they trained to death in order to master the craft of swordsmanship. And while on the subject, why not make Tanjiro the exception to the rule? By this I mean the only teenager among adults to go through the final selection, akin to a young Kenshin distinguishing himself from his older peers as a samurai. But alas, we have young adults in charge and teenagers getting murdered by demons. Great. Just great. But wait, it gets worse! The second thing to take note of during the Hashira meeting is what the Master says about the increase in vicious crimes against humanity, and the fact that the demon threat has never been more dangerous. Shinobu adds it's getting more and more difficult to keep humans safe because the population keeps expanding. This would make perfect sense given what we know of this particular era in history. We all know how the industrialization resulted in a significant increase in population all over the world. So, it stands to reason that, if the population is growing and the demon attacks are becoming more common, the solution would be to recruit more slayers, right? And here lies the problem, as this guy accurately points out, the lack of volunteers for the job. He says that the people who get in the Demon Slayer Corps are usually those who saw their families being torn apart by demons, or are descendants from a long line of Demon Slayers. Outside of those two cases, there's not much that can be done, since becoming a Demon Slayer is ultimately a choice. It's clear that Tanjiro chose to take the risk of going through the final selection, much like Gon, who decided to try out to be a hunter. The gigantic difference between these two situations though is that being a hunter is a privilege, while being a Demon Slayer is a necessity. Unlike in Hunter x Hunter, where the Hunter Association is getting extremely overstaffed, the Demon Slayer Corps desperately needs new Demon Slayers. But not just any Demon Slayers, mind you, they require competent, strong and reliable ones at that. And that is why I will ask again, why choose children to undergo the final selection? Okay, let's try to dissect the logic behind auditioning children for the toughest job on Earth, that being hunting and killing supernatural monsters. I'm going to give you a second to think about it. What's that? You got nothing? Yeah, me neither. I gather we're dealing with teenagers between 10 and 16 here. They have no experience in the field, they are far from their prime as swordsmen, and they have no control over their emotional state because, oh, I don't know, they are children? But let's back it up a bit. Let me give you the example of Tanjiro, since we've witnessed his training from the beginning. Tanjiro trained for 1 year with Mr. Rokudaki, 6 months on his own, and then 6 months training with Forced Ghosts. Again, what's that about?
A good question. For another time.
After 2 years of training, Tanjiro, now 15 years old, finally managed to master the 10 water breathing techniques. On top of this, Tanjiro had already had run-ins with demons before, so it's fair to say that he was more than ready to try the final selection exam. What about all these people though? Do they have what it takes to face demons? I mean, the skill, the fortitude, the motivation? Clearly they don't, because they are dead now. But could have they in the future? We will never know. And there lies the problem. Most of these children had potential, otherwise they wouldn't have been chosen to attend the final selection. Potential that is now extinguished thanks to the galaxy brains that designed the exam. I mean, not everyone is built the same. Imagine, let's say, this guy, Slaughter Baby number 7. Now imagine if he had trained for 3 more years and had gone on a few hunts. Maybe he could have reached Tanjiro's current level, who knows? And even if a student never reaches the level required to become a demon slayer in any official capacity, they can still be useful in some other way. They could become scouts or messengers, they could serve the trainers or the Hashiras like Misaoi, they could become assistants to the blacksmith and learn the craft of forging blades, they could even become scientists who study demon physiology. I don't know, something, so many possibilities. My point is, don't waste recruits in this ridiculous exam.
That's stupid! Use your common sense!
Okay, but let's refocus on the original issue. Children being selected to attend the final selection. Wouldn't it make more sense to try out adults? First off, adults would be closer to their prime as fighters. They would have more life experience and knowledge that would result in better decision making, but more importantly, they would have a bigger chance to be able to keep their emotions in check when facing demons. All of these are advantages children don't possess, and I truly believe that if the slayers were stricter with whom they employ, the success rate of the final selection would skyrocket. And shouldn't that be the objective? You know, try to decrease the mortality rate of the heroes that protect humanity? Maybe I speak for myself, and again, call me crazy, but I would consider that a worthy endeavor. Let's not forget, and I cannot overstate this enough, they need demon slayers in this world. Moreover, the slayers are fighting an enemy that, by simply scratching humans, turns them into demons. Not to mention that Muzan can give his own blood to his demons, making them more powerful and sadistic. So one would assume that, with all these factors working against them, the demon slayers would create a better training system to ensure all their soldiers have the proper tools to deal with these supernatural threats. But how could the system, as I call it, be improved? How would I improve the final selection, for instance? Straight answer, I wouldn't. I would simply scrap the idea altogether. It makes zero sense. I mean, why create an exam designed to kill 80% of your candidates?
That's stupid! You're stupid! Stop being stupid!
I could try to come up with an intricate exam designed to measure all the necessary attributes required for the job, like with the Shunin exams or the Hunter exams, but I think in this case there's a simpler solution. What I propose to do instead is to create secret schools for Demon Slayer prospects. Each school would be under a master of a certain breathing technique. So let's take Mr. Orokudaki for instance. He would be the master of the water technique. Instead of taking one student at a time, Mr. Orokudaki would have an entire class of younglings. Yes, you heard correctly, children. Now, I'm not opposed to the idea of training the next generation of Demon Slayers when they are young. That makes sense. What I am advocating for is to not allow them to face demons until they are ready. When the time came, the student would graduate. This wouldn't have to be a formal graduation, meaning when you reach a certain age, you are ready to leave. Being qualified for the job would just be a matter of maturity, both mental and physical. Then the student would be recommended by his master to join the Demon Slayer Corps. Following this, the student would be assigned to an examiner/teacher whom would accompany them on demon hunts. During these hunts, the teacher would evaluate the skill of the recruit and then submit a report to headquarters. Some people would immediately be assigned a rank in the Corps just after one hunt, whereas others would have to work harder in the field until the teacher deemed them ready. Now, all of this to you may sound a bit derivative from other series, but in all honesty, it's what I truly believe would make the most sense for the world of Kimetsu no Yaiba. So you see, in the end, there would be no need for any final selection or anything of the sort. Would this change the series a bit? Yes, maybe a little, but for the better. Wow, what a pretentious line. I'm such a jackass. But sincerely, thank you for watching. And the fourth reason why the final selection sucks, Zenitsu did not die.
Just fucking die already.